got into this infinity business for very practical reasons, starting with people like, well, the people you mentioned, Archimedes, and then Newton and Leibniz, who'd invented calculus. Integral and differential calculus, the basis of all modern science, technology, communications, medicine, the basis of the world we live in depends on handling infinities. So we can't ignore them. These things arise from very natural and real considerations, which I think is a point where we need to bring back the physical world from which this mathematics began. And that's our final guest that we're going to bring on is Raphael Boussou. He's a physicist and a physics professor at the University of California at Berkeley. He's recognized for discovering the general relation between the curved geometry of space-time and its information content, as well as the landscape of string theory. His work has led to new views of cosmology, the multiverse of string theory. Raphael, please.
All right. Well, if you have no questions,
All yours.
Well, I guess we all went in our subjects in one way or another because of infinity. I think that that's true for me as well. We want to know questions like, is the universe infinitely large? Is space infinitely divisible? Can you look at shorter and shorter distances? And so what I'm about to say may strike you as surprising, but really the theme that I've encountered in physics is that when we see infinities, they signal that something's wrong with our theories. They signal a crisis, which is a great thing. Physicists love crisis. We love a catastrophe because it brings on a revolution. It means that something is deeply wrong with our theory. It's not just predicting, something a little bit off in some measurement, some small discrepancy. No, infinity. So infinity is never the answer to any measurement you could do. So you're way off, and something has to give. And there are many classic examples of this. One is the discovery of quantum mechanics a little over 100 years ago. In that case, the crisis in question was, people had figured out how to do thermodynamics. They'd figured out that hot bodies radiate, like if you turn on the stove, you can see it glow red after a while, or the lamps, they radiate. They emit light, but you could calculate how much light they should emit, how much power is emitted by a lamp. And the answer was infinity. The answer was infinity, basically because there are infinitely many ways that the little atoms inside the material that's hot can wiggle. They can wiggle in particular in very, very fast ways. And every one of these ways will be turned on if you turn on the lamp, and then the lamp gives off an infinite amount of energy, and that would be a problem because it's not true. And so people had to do something about it, and literally quantum mechanics was invented as a desperate fix for this. I mean, Planck, who came up with the fix, the fix was that energy can only be emitted in certain packets of a certain size, which effectively turns off a lot of these wigglings. The ones that wiggle very fast don't get to wiggle anymore. He was a very conservative physicist. He hated doing this sort of thing, but he had no choice. And that's a wonderful example of how a crisis, of how a catastrophe in physics can drive us forward and make us discover new things. Another example I want to mention just briefly is what happened afterwards. People discovered how to apply quantum theory to the forces we know. Electromagnetism, the weak and strong nuclear force that hold the nucleus together, or sometimes make it fall apart. The theories that do this are called quantum field theory.
Quantum field.
And initially, these theories were also plagued by infinities. You started doing a calculation, after a while, out comes infinity. And again, of course, you're doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. In this case, it was a much more subtle problem. And it took people decades to understand how it really worked. But in the end, this property of being able to get rid of infinities proved to be incredibly constraining. It helped us zoom in on the right theory and know right away which ones couldn't be right. And in fact, this theory that was so dramatically confirmed recently, the Standard Model with the discovery of the Higgs that was already mentioned, you may have heard about it, this particle they discovered
Higgs boson
at CERN
control the protons.
people have believed that theory for a long time because there was other experimental evidence for it. But 40 years ago, when it was put into place, the reason that physicists really started believing in it was that somebody showed
Believing in it?
that you can get rid of all the infinities in that theory. That was an incredibly difficult thing to show.
How do you
It's a very
believe
rare
in it
thing to
when you
happen in
could
these kinds of
show?
theories. And so at that point, you kind of knew that you were onto something.
Wow,
So-
I am onto something. You don't have
so
to
that's,
believe. You need to
that's
show.
the setting. And what I want to tell you a little bit about now is
that's
that
what the
we
science
still have
community is
trouble
about.
with
It's
infinity.
deterministic.
And it's still incredibly exciting, and I think it's still,
It can be.
we still
You're
have
into
these
that shit.
examples of problems which are catastrophic. I mean, we get
Huge problems, yeah,
answers
some
which
big-ass
just are
fucking
completely
science problems.
nonsensical and which are hopefully going to lead us on to some dramatic revolutions in physics. And so I
Wow.
want to come back to this question of how large the universe is. It's very large. And
How do you know?
and, but we've known that for a long time.
How? Well,
I'll tell
yeah,
you in a
I
minute what that has
assumed-
to do with the universe.
I assume.
This is Angels and Devils, out of respect for my theologian colleague
Me?
here. And okay, but
him?
let me back off of this for a minute. So you've heard the universe is large, okay? You've all heard the universe
I
is
assumed.
expanding.
I assumed.
That's
Oh,
fine.
yeah, I did hear that. Well,
Now,
it's folding
the
in.
question of whether
Lord.
the universe is infinite or not, it used to be phrased as a question of, let's look at the universe right now and think about how far does space go, okay? And,
Well, the internet's
it's
fucked.
probably not going to end somewhere where, you fall off into nothingness.
The Facebook
But one thing that
database.
it could do is it could sort of close back in on itself like the surface of the
Right,
Earth.
people could
Except
follow
without
and
the
then
interior
they're
of
like,
the
yeah,
Earth, you have to think that away. But it
Don't
could,
take that
be
away.
finite in
Follow
that
me.
sense, or it just could keep on going forever. Now, that is a very
Start
hard
here.
question to decide. We could have gotten lucky if the universe is small enough that you could see light going once around that surface. Then you could really detect that it's finite. But the universe is only 13 billion years old.
So I'm
Light could
infinite.
only have gotten that far since the Big Bang, and so it could be finite spatially, but we just wouldn't know about it because we haven't seen.
the boundaries.
It's just like somebody who like Kant, who never traveled outside his hometown. He has no idea that
You trying to fucking
that
poke fun of me?
The world is actually finite. It could be going on forever. Who knows? But the terms of the debate have changed. The terms of the debate have changed. We don't need to be able to answer that question anymore.
I agree.
We don't need to know whether space is finite or infinite.
Wow.
And the reason for that is that things are happening in time, which are
Wow.
very interesting. So the universe is expanding, but what's
Relatively.
new is that it's expanding faster and faster. That's new both in a human sense, it was discovered only about 15 years ago, and also in a cosmic sense, it only happened about 7 billion years ago. So it hasn't
Right.
been
There's
accelerating.
this guy, Terrence McKenna, said
That's when
time
it
is
stepped
out
off
of
the brake
novelty
and
and
stepped
habit.
on the gas pedal. That's when the expansion went from slowing down to speeding up.
Right.
And now we see it
Because there's
speeding
more
up,
novelty,
and
we
it'll speed up
experience
at
way
an
more novelty
exponential.
with technology. The novelty is just like way more expanded. Habits, yeah, you still got to drink water and eat. So like your sense of time is guided around those two principles of, doing something out of habit or doing something out of novelty. It's a superposition of both. You could be doing the same thing out of habit, but there's variables. So like the temperature, the pressure could be different. You got all these data points. Depends on how you measure it. That's the infinity concept I think he's getting at.
Rate, meaning that it'll sort of double every few billion years. It'll double in size.
Huh.
It's like the
And-
budget deficit, right?
It's like the budget deficit. And
That's the other kind of inflation, I guess.
right,
Wow.
right, and it leads to a crisis. Just like
Wow.
right. So now I'm going to tell you what happens. This is a painting by Escher, actually, but it's the universe, okay? And the beginning of the universe is the middle of this disk, the center.
Wow.
And then time goes outward, okay, to the edges. And what you're seeing here is the doubling of the number of angels and devils as you go forward in time. But in order to show this in a finite
Yeah.
picture, I had to shrink. So there's really an infinite amount of time as you go to the edge.
Facts, 'cause there's
And then
so
you can
many
kind of see
ways
that
to
there's
just meet
infinitely
it
many
on both
angels and
sides.
devils as you approach the edge. I had to rescale them, but you're supposed to think of them as all being the same size. What's happening in our universe is very similar.
Wow,
Regions
you
like
gotta see them
ours
at
are
the
produced
same
over and
size.
over.
Facts. One guy also said that taking like drugs, like psychedelics, is like you're basically like getting on the outside of this ring, peeking over, but you're still here.
Over and over again in this very large universe, which is doubling in size all the time. We call this eternal inflation, literally like in
Eternal inflation.
in finance. And
Studied finance.
The problem here
Got
is
a
that you see,
bachelor's
even
degree.
if you can draw a circle here that represents the universe at a finite time, the circle is finite. I'm not.
So my circle's finite because I've lived, but is that how I'm identifying right now?
Assuming
If
here
I were
that
to identify as like something, yeah.
space is infinite to start with, but it
Infinite to
gets
start
infinite
with.
later. It gets arbitrarily large later on,
Yeah.
and stuff keeps happening. Okay, and that's the reason that this is a crisis is that it makes it very hard to predict anything, and here's why. One way to see this is to think back of Hilbert's Hotel, which conveniently you guys already talked about.
Yeah.
It may look like there are infinitely many angels or devils. Think of them as different regions in the universe, and you want to predict, if you open your eyes, where do you find yourself, in a black or in a white region?
Well, my eye
Well,
is
there are infinitely
black.
many of both. It doesn't
My
make
eye's
sense
a
to say
black
it's
hole.
a half-half chance,
My
because I
eyes are
can
black
reorder
holes.
these angels and devils so that there's still infinitely many, but it makes it look like there are far more angels and so on.
Right.
So I can always reorder this.
Mm-hmm.
In this universe, there are infinitely many places where you win the lottery,
Why'd that
and
guy
of course,
call?
infinitely many places where you don't.
Must have rejected it.
And on what basis then do we predict that you probably aren't going to win the lottery? Right? Now, the lottery question, okay, we can laugh about that. We all know what the right answer is. All that this is saying is that we don't know how to recover the right answer from cosmology yet.
Wow.
Okay?
Cosmos.
But there are other questions, like what we should see when we look out through our telescopes, for which we need to know
Cosmos
the
turns
answer
into
to
the
that
lava
question.
jackpot.
And if something like the multiverse of string theory is right, there are many different ways that the laws of physics could behave at low energies. And to predict what we will see in an experiment that tests those laws, we need to solve this problem.
Right.
We need to get rid of these infinities.
Huh. Interesting.
Now, one thing I haven't told you yet, the same discovery, this was a colleague of mine at Berkeley, by the way, and
Me?
some other people, Saul
Music?
Perlmutter,
I
who-
study
who
music.
discovered that the universe is accelerating its expansion. It has another fascinating consequence. So it leads to this universe that becomes arbitrarily large,
But folding.
but actually there's nobody inside the universe who can see the whole thing.
Right.
And I don't just mean us, we can't see everything because we live only, 13 billion years after the Big Bang, and so light hasn't had that much
Because we're
time
in
to
our own
travel
little
yet.
mini universes?
No, even if you imagine that you got to live as long as you wanted, light cannot ever get to you from beyond a certain fixed distance because of this rapid expansion.
Whoa.
It's very similar to the effect that prevents light from getting out from inside a black hole. Inside a black hole, space is collapsing too rapidly for light to outrun it. And here the universe is expanding too fast away from us for light to run back toward us.
Wow.
No matter how long you wait, it's not going to make it.
Wow.
Now, what I want you to think of these spheres as representing,
Is he just kind of representing how
distance.
physics just makes it worse?
because of this rapid expansion, it's very similar to the effect that
But
prevents
that's me
light
being
from getting
dark,
out
so
from
I'm trying to
inside a
get
black
out of that
hole.
energy.
Inside a black hole, space is collapsing too rapidly for light to outrun it.
So my light can't
And here the
outrun it.
universe is expanding too fast away from us for light to run back toward us.
Right.
No matter how long you wait, it's not going to make
There's too many
it.
questions for you guys to see what I'm doing.
Now, what I want you to think of these spheres
Unless you
as,
see
as
it.
representing,
Depends on which vacuum you're going to commit to.
other than really awesome graphics that I
Quantum graphics.
is
Quantum.
is think of one of these spheres, if you want the one with the zeros and ones on it, as what we can see. So what physicists would call your past light cone. Everything that could have reached us, as long as it stuck to the rules and didn't go fast in the speed of light. That is bounded by a finite sphere of a few
Faster
billion light
than the
years in
speed
radius.
of light. The speed of Chris.
And
Is a person faster than the speed
that's
of
all we
light?
can see. That's our universe.
Wow, yeah.
That's
I think a
finite.
person can be faster than this.
What if the right way to think about the universe is to say that really all this hypothetical stuff that our equations is telling us that nobody can ever see even in
It's
principle
jargon.
because of these limits from causality. because of the
Causality.
finite sphere. What if that is just a fiction of our equations? What if the real thing that we should worry about
Is the
what
equations?
one observer can in principle see? And again, I don't necessarily mean
Whoa.
a limited observer like us. We're all going to die. The sun's going to burn out, and so on. I mean, in principle, consistent with the laws of causality. What
Wow.
could you see? That's finite. And in fact, it's so finite that it even solves this problem of infinities that come from short distances. And I want to close with a brief comment on that. The reason I put all these ones and zeros on that sphere is to sort of indicate that there's a finite amount of information that you need to describe everything that's going on inside the visible universe.
Right.
This is something that we've learned by studying black holes. And the
Okay.
reason it is so is that we know how much information fits into a black hole.
Yep.
We learned that from people like Bekenstein and Hawking, and that would be an evening by itself. In fact, we have some
Information
here.
is in a black hole. Yeah, I could probably write down
we've
all my
learned how
info
much
if you were to just like extract it, maybe.
Information a black hole carries. And we also know that information cannot get lost.
What?
And we could convert everything in the universe into a black hole, which wouldn't be larger than this big sphere that's in our past light cone, the biggest sphere we can see.
Right, because that's where I closed.
And so
it.
we know that there's a maximum amount of information that can completely describe the state of every single little detail in the universe.
In
Not
the
just where
Earth,
you're
especially
sitting,
on the
but
Earth,
where
bro.
every atom in your brain is
On the fucking
and
Earth,
what it's
too.
doing and where it's moving. It's a very large number, but there's a big difference between a large number and infinity.
Right.
And
Whoa.
if you care about it, it's about 10 to the 103 bits.
10 to the
103
103 bits.
So it's a large number, but it's finite.
I got a
Telling
K-Payne
us,
1.0 103.
Not only that we are able to predict again who's going to win the lottery, and that you're not going to win it,
Aw.
but also that at some level space must be not continuously divisible. And we
Right.
think we sort of know what happens.
See
when
that?
you
I
try
didn't
to
divide
probe
it. I'm
distances
just-
that are
I'm
too small,
listening to
start
you.
making black holes. But that's again that unfortunately is probably something I won't be able to get into. But I want to leave you with this. So far as we can tell,
He just wants to
all that you
talk.
ever need to worry about in the universe is finite. This bound on information tells us that you couldn't write down a single one of these numbers with infinitely many digits
Right.
that appeared on some of the earlier slides. They do not have room in our universe. You would make a black hole that doesn't fit.
Wow, so that's what writing a book
Well,
is
that's
and
it.
everything? No shit.
So the question that's probably on your mind is, are these four guys talking about the same thing? And Philip, you live in Los
No,
Angeles. You
because you're
negotiate
the
the Los
black
Angeles
hole.
freeways on a daily basis. Can you pull all of this together, or is it really a black hole like Los Angeles? I live in San Francisco. There's,
LA.
there's a thing going on here.
Well, Keith,
There
it's
is a
great
thing
question
going
because
on.
the first
I'm
response
doing
is you
this for
listen
the
to
sake of
four
San
ta-
Fran, but I really want to be an actor, so LA is my heart.
The four talks is there are at least three different subjects being talked about. So we have the question of a mathematical challenge.
Right.
And Hugh actually describes it as a purely mathematical challenge and separates it from the kind of question we'd face in physics. You did that explicitly in your talk. Then we have the physical challenge, powerfully expressed by Raphael. And then we have these broader philosophical or metaphysical questions
Yes.
that preoccupied the thinkers that I described. And the scary first response to these panels is we've got three different spheres, like your different spheres, could it be no contact between them?
3 different spears. Could it be no contact
That'd be bad news
between
for the
them?
moderator.
That's what quarks are?
I didn't want to sound so negative. In
thanks.
fact, I should be careful. I said that infinity is usually a sign of crisis in physics, but that's really in the context of situations where
They come to an end?
we expect a finite answer. We want to get an answer
Right,
that
they
corresponds to a
expect-
measurement we can make.
But they don't get it.
Surprisingly often, structures that were invented by mathematicians for purely abstract reasons, for the fun of it, they get to make stuff up and then study it, and they come upon these really rich structures, and then 50 years later, 100 years later, turns out the physicists need them desperately to describe nature as we see it.
Right.
And usually the mathematicians are faster, and they already have them, and they give them to you. And it could be that by
The
studying
mathematician.
questions such as the one that Cantor's continuum hypothesis, that you come upon a structure which later, in some way or another, has an application
Right.
in our description
Interesting.
of nature.
Object permanence.
What I don't think is going to happen is that the answer to any question that has to do with a measurement is ever going to be infinity. But that's a separate issue, and that's what I focused on. But I don't think that there's necessarily no connection ever between what you guys study, the structures that have to do with trying to make sense of infinity, classifying infinities. Who knows?
Let me go back to Hugh, because in your business you talk
quiet.
about the universe of sets. Is there any way that works as a metaphor for the kind of thing that Raphael talks about?
Yes.
How far can you push that?
Depends what agency I'm talking to. I have to be honest.
Is there any way that works as a metaphor for the kind of thing that Raphael talks about? How far can you push that?
Depends what agency I'm talking to.
Depends on what agency I'm talking to, right? No shit. You got to keep info private. It's what they do. Those groups of studies and research.
I have to be honest. It's
Appreciate the honesty.
impossible. It's a losing game to say one area of mathematics will not have future application. You just look at what's going on now. Who would have thought that esoteric questions in number theory from 50, 60 years ago would have fundamental societal importance in cybersecurity? So you never make that prediction, you'll lose. The questions in number theory from 50, 60 years ago would have fundamental societal importance in cybersecurity. So you never make that prediction, you'll lose. All I can say is that if the kind of infinities we study in set theory, if that whole apparatus does somehow eventually become relevant to physics, it'll be extraordinary. I mean, there are mathematicians who think it's not even relevant to mathematics. So we're just waiting to see the relevance to mathematics before the relevance to physics. I mean, but
Yeah.
I'll push back on that in the following sense. I mean, it's one thing to have a great success in
Numbers came
mathematics if that success leads to physics. And some will say that's the essence of mathematics and that's a success of mathematics.
Okay.
But if a line of investigation in mathematics that seems so alien, so utterly removed from physics, can be successful, then that's something that's interesting. And that would be my position. If we are successful in the study of infinity and we can really answer these questions, and this is not a matter of calculation. There's no computer you can build that's going to give you the answer to the continuum hypothesis. It's not a simple matter of a calculation. It's a matter of trying to understand the concepts. I never write equations down. So I get very strange looks when people see me working.
Same. I hate that. I always got in trouble for not showing my work. Math.
I remember once when
Ask my
I
teachers.
used to work on the floor, and my daughter would sit next to me, and she'd start copying every mark that I made on the page.
I'm not your daughter.
Can you explain, by the way,
My
just
astrology is
people, what are they
feminine.
seeing in this picture?
Distracting.
This is how the sausage gets made, by the way. The mathematical sausage.
You know, I get asked about these kinds of things a lot.
I just asked you again.
Yes. So some people are convinced I have a private language, and that, I mean, I know what I was thinking about. That's from last week, but I'll be truthful. I once watched someone, a mentalist who could really do these incredible calculations.
Right.
And they would occasionally say the number that would park that number in a different part of their brain.
Right.
And then I find I do that sometimes if I'm, working on the computer, not that. And I have to remember a number that I have to type in another window. I just say it out loud. And then I can do all the other manipulations, and somehow I'm able to retrieve that 10-digit number. So what I'm doing there, I think, is I'm parking concepts, organizing them in my field of view, as I'm juggling various things. So I'm just parking complicated concepts on various marks.
Right.
But, I'm not a biologist. I'm not a neurologist.
So this is a mathematical equivalent of diagramming sentences, or?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's...
Reference points in your brain, yeah.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
No shit.
Remember, if you're paying taxes, your money is supporting this.
Facts.
I did have a
What?
question about line 14 in the calculation there. Are you sure about that one?
Line 14.
Actually, though, there was one thing that occurred
That's
to
a
me in all
joke.
of
Look
this.
at this
which
guy. He's
may-
like, are
I
you
did have a
fucking
question
kidding me?
about,
Look at his
line
face.
14 in the calculation there.
He's like,
Are you sure
really?
about that one?
He's like looking down. He's like kind of crying on the inside.
Actually,
And
no,
then he's like, damn. He's like, you kind of got me though. I can't say it's real or not, but I do it.
There was one thing
And
that
then
occurred.
he's like looking at him. Look at that quick look. He looks
Are you
really
sure about
quick
that
at
one?
him. That's like a disgust thing.
Actually, though, there was one thing
Right
that
there,
occurred to
boom.
me in all of this, which may surprise people, that within the sociology of mathematics, set theory occupies a somewhat possibly surprising place. That is, I'm a working mathematician who works in
Fringe
areas.
element, I think.
Well, that's not such a nice way to say it. These people in set theory strike us, even in math, as sort of strange. That we.
Now it gets interesting.
It's true that we ignore them, and we know that they're doing really deep, important work, and in principle, it's foundational work. That is, they're shaking the foundations, and we're all working up on the second and third floor, and if they mess something up, it could actually tip us over, but we still ignore them, just trusting that this is irrelevant. But we may really be desperately wrong. It's a scary thought to operate that way.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll respond to that slightly.
I think you have to.
Yeah.
I mean,
I like
set
how he
theory
pauses
can be
himself.
tough
He's
to
like,
operate
this
that
is
way.
like me is
Yeah.
what I do for a
okay,
job.
I'll respond to that slightly.
Not like me personally because like he probably is fired up.
I mean, set theory can be falsified. This entire, it's one thing to say we're not going to solve the problem, but you could actually do quite a bit more. You
Right,
could
create
show
more
that
problems.
the concepts are contradictory. Now this can happen, this is Gödel's second incompleteness theorem. Any axiomatic system is subject to the possibility of being refuted. Now, if the axioms for number theory were shown to be contradictory, that would be a crisis, because that would wipe out all of mathematics. It would wipe out foundations of physics. Now, this doesn't mean the world's going to collapse, but that would be a problem. So, if you want to gain security, it's kind of like mathematics lives in a stable island. And
Yeah.
we have a solid foundation. And then there are the wild lands out there. That's infinity. Myths and things. And is it there? How secure
Wow.
is this? Can we build a city over there? So by investigating
Akon's
infinity,
building a city.
and to the extent that we can be successful, I think we make the case for the consistency of arithmetic.
Wow.
Now that's a bit of a fanatical
Consistency of
statement.
arithmetic.
But if infinity doesn't lead to a contradiction, certainly the finite isn't going to lead to a contradiction. And so maybe by exploring the outer reaches
The
to see
finite would lead
if
to
there
a
is a
finite. Wow.
contradiction, you gain some security. So in that sense, maybe there's a value. I mean,
Wow.
finite
need
contradiction
contradiction.
would be really bad.
Humans need contradiction. Wow.
There's another.
Humans
everyone's
fuel
moving away.
off contradiction.
Doesn't get much worse.
I'm going to ignore that. In the sense that, it is too horrible to contemplate that arithmetic is
Yeah.
not, it happens to me all the time that my arithmetic is not consistent, but that's another,
Wow, yeah.
that's another issue. There is one
Issue.
place in physics that where I'm worried, or maybe hopeful in a way, that infinity is centrally important to it, but it's really not clear which way it's going to go, and
pessimistic.
that's quantum mechanics itself, and particularly the sense in which quantum mechanics is a scientific theory. It's a scientific theory because it makes statistical predictions. Where depending on how you prepare
What?
an electron, you can't say that you're definitely going to find it over here. You
Well,
won't
when you
just say, okay,
synthesize
if I prepared
stuff,
a million
depends on how
times
you
like
control
this,
that environment,
I will find it
what type of
approximately 20%
vacuum
of the time in
you're
this interval
creating.
and 30% in this one, and so on. And if you repeat the experiment a billion times, then the distribution you'll find will confirm the prediction even more accurately. And you can keep going, but of course, really there's always an incredibly small chance that you just got lucky with your experiments and actually the theory is wrong. That chance gets smaller and smaller as you repeat the experiment over and over and over again, but it is just a statistical prediction. So it could be
Wow.
that your theory is actually wrong and you're not discovering it.
It is just a stat.
You're not discovering this contradiction because of some statistical fluke.
You're not
Just
discovering
like
the
sometimes,
contradiction.
you
Yeah,
know,
you're not enjoying
You
this.
flip a coin 100 times, always comes up heads. Could
Heads.
happen.
I'm using my head.
So flukes
Yeah,
happen,
yeah.
and for this reason, you might be concerned that quantum mechanics fundamentally doesn't make sense unless you are at least in principle able to repeat an experiment infinitely many times.
Whoa.
Again, that's not going to be us. That's
Infinite.
For sure.
You got to know all the variables, dude.
What
Come
makes
on.
you worried, or should make you worried about the picture that I showed you, is that it looks like in our universe, even an observer
Closes
who
his
has,
eyes.
you know,
He's
arbitrary-
struggling.
what
He's
makes you
struggling. He
worried or
found
should make
himself
you worried
caught.
about the
Look
picture
at this guy. He
experiment
changed his body
infinitely
language
many
too, so
times.
he acknowledges
Again,
his
that's
side
not
is
going to be
proved or
us,
some
that's for
shit.
sure. But what makes you worried or
So
should make
okay,
you
so
worried
he
able
looks
to
he
repeat
looks
an
really quick,
experiment
like
infinitely many
oh
times.
shit, look back
Again,
at the
that's not
screen,
going to be us, that's for sure.
and he raises his
but-
eyebrows like a cop trying to convince you. And then this pause right here, this is where he's swallowing some shit.
What makes you worried or
But
should
he's a professional, and that's what he does. But this guy right here, check this guy. He's gonna move his body language.
make you worried about the picture
Oh no
that
no
I
no, the guy in the middle did. But that guy did. Yeah, the guy in the
but-
middle.
What makes you worried or should make you worried
He's
about the
like,
picture
okay.
that I showed you is that it looks like
And he
in our
closes his
universe,
eyes.
even an observer who had an arbitrarily long lifetime could not repeat an experiment infinitely many times.
Infinitely, yeah. You know
That's
the
not just
what?
because the accessible region and the causal
What? No, I can fucking type H infinite times, dude. Technically not infinity because like I can't stay alive forever. But this is where the fucking concept of like AI, artificial intelligence, could do that, infinitely run. If it's powered.
accessible region will
So if the computer is powered, it infinitely runs, so you can achieve infinity that way. But that means that it's not even AI. Like you need human input to maintain fuel.
always remain a finite-sized sphere and everything inside it.
Right.
But
So
also
it always, we always stay on this globe, yo. No matter what, we coming back home, yo. Shit. And look at any interview of astronauts and shit, yo. They just ready to be on Earth. They walking all funny, getting massages and stuff. That's nuts.
because the universe is at a finite temperature if it's at a finite size, and it will not allow you to exist forever.
It's not an
even if
infinite
you are not
temperature, yeah.
human and
The
tied to
sun
all
ain't
these
blowing up.
constraints.
It's
So,
weird.
so you
Not
cannot
here.
even in principle repeat an experiment infinitely many times. I don't know whether we should read that as a sign that maybe quantum mechanics is after all only some effective theory, some approximation to a richer structure that we have yet to discover. Or perhaps we could see it as a sign that it is possible in this universe for a kind of decay or a change to its state to happen, which does open up the skies and let you repeat experiments infinitely many times. Again, not you, but at least somebody in principle.
Right. So I
and-
can
and
show
in-
you how to
in-
do it.
Unfortunately, the multiverse of string
Hold
theory,
up.
or a kind of decay or a change to its state to have a structure that we have yet to discover. Or perhaps we could see it as a sign that it is possible in this universe for a kind of decay or a change to its state to happen, which does open up the skies and let you repeat experiments infinitely many times. Again, not you, but at least somebody in principle.
Wow, open up the skies. Interesting. And this is interesting because this guy shows up in the background. The way he showed up in the background the other time, I'm picking up on his energy field. So that's weird, yo. He also really saying some shit.
Change to its state to happen, which does open up the skies and let you
Okay, so decay, right? So technically we're talking about decay. Evidently, we have this idea of stars decaying. So the idea of a human judgment of that is anticipating like things decaying on Earth. But we also examine like elements have a decay, radioactive stuff has a decay. And humans, like our carbon, we can carbon date. So my bones got a certain lifespan. The carbon in my body got a certain lifespan. It decays. And then once you realize this whole death thing, I guess, if I'm living on my own, I'm gonna die, open up the skies. But technically, if humans need contradiction, like I'm here to just kind of open up that.
You and let you repeat experiments infinitely. It is possible
But
in this
how can
universe for a kind of decay or a change to its
Yeah.
state to happen, which does open up the skies and let you repeat experiments infinitely many times. Again, not you, but at least somebody in principle.
No shit.
Um,
Somebody
and
in
it-
principle.
it-
So I could technically create infinitely proof of humans need contradiction. Infinite proof. So if you switch your mindset to everything is the way you operate and live, everything is contradiction. You have to, what is it contradicting, I guess? So it could be contradicting God, you, your inside self, your values, your beliefs, anything with your senses contradicts your senses. So humans need contradiction. If you don't have wow, so what does the monk do, right? So the monk is meditating all day, every day. Let's just get an example of that, right? And the contradiction is like, simply put, he can't exist without contradiction. If he really wants to just like not have contradiction, he will just exist. And I'm talking in the element of like right now I exist, but not really. I'm not even like I'm doing something, it can be defined and I'm talking, I'm speaking. But my body and stuff, you can measure where I am, but even to talk right now is contradiction. So if you're literally just meditating in a way, like these people do and escaping to these zones and consciousness realms, I guess, under the practice of meditation or self-introspection, wherever those places take you, you're only existing in one of those planes. So this is actually right on par with they say how people live in the flesh. If you're literally living in the flesh, like you're kind of existing. You don't have any thoughts to contradict what you're doing. You're just living in the flesh. And this is how they said that in the Bible, but I think it kind of just, living in the flesh, responding to your body, living in for the body. You got to live for the mind, the soul, like the aspirations of like what gives you life and energy. Yeah, it's like looking forward to shit like the positrons, or not specifically the positrons. Don't get me quoted on that. But the idea is, there's a quantum phenomena that like the way you live, I guess, live versus exist is by contradiction. Because the monk will contradict himself to literally say like, yo, I gotta eat, your boy gotta eat, your body gotta eat. So he doing that. But it's that contradiction Because unless this guy's receiving it as like a message from God to like fucking eat, he's not gonna have any signs. But you ultimately, in order to move your body, you have to contradict your mind. Like, it is a free will choice. Like, I will not quote myself on this wrong. I can say that, yeah, when people are under the influence of like spirits, they like kind of become what's called like not wakeful, almost robotic in a way, primal. And the craziest thing I could think of is just like someone blacking out or like on some type of drug or medicine or roofies, yo, and just going for sex. Like, they that's like a weird. And you know, like the whole thing is like, yeah, you could just be crazy and wanting to have fun, being silly, joking and shit. She getting naked and then like do that stuff, and it makes her feel free, but and liberated, and like or she become regressive and just like really want to just. These are like block the contradiction. Drugs kind of block the contradiction, I guess. The alcohol blacking out could block contradiction. So you say stupid shit. You don't think before you act. So the monk is like practicing like hardcore contradiction. Like hardcore contradiction. And how do you realistically create something to contradict yourself against? This is the question. This is the thing, yo. And this is what faith does, yo. They'll contradict you to, let's say, yeah, Jesus Christ. You gotta act like you contradict yourself according to the laws of the commandment, to the laws of society. You contradict yourself to the point where this guides you, and contradiction is guidance. Contradiction is guidance. So it's pretty crazy when you have contradictions is kind of like guidance, yeah. But if you were to just exist, right, and just go zoned out, like, hold up, this is a good question. Do people eat in a coma? Gastrology tube? Gastronomy. It's like astronomy, but it's gastronomy. Whoa, holy fuck. Gastronomy? Are you serious? What? Yo, gastronomy is literally probably the fucking answer to shit. Gastronomy is whoa, nutrition in the form of shakes. Before the gastronomy tube is placed, the person may be fed by the insertion of feeding tubes through the nose or the stomach. Other forms of nutrition includes intravenous total parenteral nutrition, intravenous infusing Whoa. Okay. Parental nutrition, often called total parenteral nutrition, is the medical term for infusing a specialized form of food through a vein intravenously. The goal of the treatment is to correct or prevent malnutrition. Wow. So are you trying to tell me right now that we can literally feed ourselves like this and gastronomy is the fucking new wave? We've been fucking for mad years looking out at the stars, and now we're fucking waking up. We gotta look into this shit. Gastronomy. I'm a fucking gastronomer, dude. Yo, who knew farts would save the world, yo? That's insane. Gastronomy, okay. Parenteral nutrition. Specialized form of food through a vein. Intravenously. Okay, so to correct or prevent malnutrition. Wouldn't that mean it can create nutrition? Liquid nutrients, vitamins, minerals, electrolytes. Whoa. You need it for what? Insane. All right, that's a good lead, but yeah, basically you can't exist in this finite realm of the other existential consciousness. Like you can, but like you will need contradiction to like be like, oh fuck, I gotta eat. Unless specifically, like we're talking like in the movies, you're in this fucking lab floating bubble fluid thing, and they got this shit hooked up to your veins. And the idea is like you could probably hook up a brain, maybe, I don't know, because we have carbon dating, so like technically our body lives certain lifespan. But this is the whole idea of like how you could fucking download data, right? So like you take LSD and it's like a chemical compound, but it reacts with the brain in a way that like fucking you're downloading, more or less downloading data. And then so what if the idea is like, all right, so you take this like form of a compound, chemical compound, and then it's like you download the brain. The thing is like the LSD is like an experience. You experience it, it like goes away, and they just have mad studies on it. I don't really know what you'd be taking away to like keep forever that is existing in a human, and that can exist. They say like the heart has like a certain amount of beats, and like your body, and these are finite things, and like straight up we're talking about like there's kind of finite things on the universe, not in the universe, like on Earth. It could be finitely measured and described if we adjust the way we you know, denominate names to things and stuff like that, it is very much like, yeah, finite on Earth. But not really. I mean, is there a finite amount of oil, water, all these things? Like, if we can't even detect how much water is on Earth, technically it's infinite. And the atmosphere can absorb shit from outside the universe, outside of the, like, Earth atmosphere to, like, yeah, formulate water and shit. Unless it's just impenetrable and it is finite and there is, but then it's just like, matter can neither be created nor destroyed. So that's exactly what Einstein figured out, right? So he's kind of talking about how, yeah, physically here we're like finite. But if you were to try to just meditate for like ages, yo, yeah, you can release infinite probably. And going into dreams is like infinite amount of dreams, but the one thing is like you need contradiction to be like, fuck, yo, your boy gotta eat. Your boy gotta eat. So you can't exist in that realm forever.
Unfortunately, the multiverse of string theory, which played a big role in giving rise to these pictures, at least making them more interesting to us, it sort of tantalizingly gives us no
Multiverse
answer
theory, yeah,
about
you're
this
in my
question.
universe. That's what I know. That's what I freaking know. And I think that it's pretty fair to say that, you know, we're kind of onto something with this whole being gastronomers, yo. We gotta fucking look inward to the body instead of outward. And in terms of this corona shit, yo, too, damn, yeah, yo, hell yeah. You talking about, like, a pandemic occurred? This is, like, the time to fucking look into everything about our body finitely. And this could be my Higgs boson, control of protons, saying that we'll get there. But, like, you could probably define all this shit, maybe. But then when you take these substances, DMT, I've never taken, but I've heard people talk about it, Joe Rogan and stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, he's going off about how he's talking to, like, things, guiding spirits, elves he taught about, but they guide him because, like, they contradict. Like, he just fucking saw an elf. And then he's just looted on a podcast talking about that shit. So, it's pretty crazy, man. It's really crazy. You could get into Einstein for sure. I'm into that. Matter can neither be created nor destroyed. But then I don't know what he has to say about this nuclear bomb shit, yo. And if stuff decays, like, does it just go away forever? You know, these are all good things to look into, I guess. But we're getting a little off track. I just added a new personality, gastronomy.
It seems to contain in it regions in which the sky opens up and becomes infinitely large.
Oh, the sky opens
we could
up.
decay
Holy
into one of
fuck.
these regions.
Is that literally what he just said? That's what I totally forgot he said. Okay, so yeah, damn. All right, so that's where he's talking about. He just gave me some time to let the sky open up. Thank you for that, sir. We continuing.
Wipe us out, but it would then open up a huge amount of space and time, in which maybe you could try to make sense of the laws of quantum mechanics at a completely rigorous level, and no longer have to hope that in repeating your experiment many, many times, but a finite number of times, you didn't get unlucky and nature fooled you. So that's one place where I can one day perhaps see infinity
get
enter
unlucky and
as a
nature
real player
fooled
in how we try to decide between.
So we need
theories.
human nature. That's what
Completely
you need
rigorous
people
level,
to be.
and no longer have to hope that in repeating your experiment many, many times, but a finite number of times, you didn't get unlucky and nature fooled you. So that's one place where I can one
Right?
day
Some
perhaps
fucking
see
shit,
infinity
a
enter as a real
catastrophe
player
occurs.
in how we try to decide between
Which
theories.
just showed up out of nowhere, so you never know.
Actually, yeah, I'll say something. So
Quote
this
me,
is-
if we get a fucking deadly astrology some shit, just an asteroid hit Earth, you heard it from me first. Oh wait, no, shit. This doesn't make sense. But if it hits this New York side, yo, you fucking out, yo. Tell everybody, yo, I was that.
This is opening door to infinity. What if the theologian shuts it down? So what if the notion of infinity turns out to be something that
Right,
only
so my
works-
theologian just shut it down. I got theology here. I'm approaching it with this whole video. I'm trying to watch the whole video.
if we never imagine it actually to be actualized at all? What if it's about
Right,
this
I
phone?
didn't, yo.
What
I
if-
fucking paused this video yesterday. I didn't even think it was gonna be actualized. I never thought I'd be talking about this. I never thought I'd have that room to just like go off on this gastrology rant and find and come to the really good point that specifically as a human being, we're not talking about the universe, the cosmos, no bullshit. I'm a human. Like, we thrive off contradiction.
the notion is about the limits on what we can
Contradiction
know,
is guidance.
Period. So get rid of the theological stuff, get rid of all the metaphysical stuff. And Hilbert did this actually in a lecture in 1917. What if the notion is about our trying to grasp some set of data or some set of events in the world and succeeding or failing? What if the interesting thing
what?
between us, what if the notion is about our trying to grasp some set of data or some set of events in the world and succeeding or failing? What if the interesting thing between us is
Succeeding
that
or
there are
failing is
interesting
superposition?
cognitive similarities between what Hugh does for a living, what you guys do for a living, what a classic philosopher might do, namely taking something to be understood, grasping it to some extent, failing to some extent, and we're trying to get some measure on where we succeed or where we fail. And now I'm trying to imagine a meta perspective above the three fields represented in these opening lectures, something about the cognitive styles that humans have as we grasp for understanding around us.
Wow.
Add to that, because by the way, we saw that video at the beginning, that with all of those interviews. We saw it for the first time just before you came.
He's
And I was
talking about
struck
me
by
smoking weed.
Zalberger, the guy with the cool T-shirt, who mentioned the fact that with modern
Wants me
computing
to make
power,
T-shirts.
a lot of the needs for infinity disappear. I think he was referring to the fact that a lot of historical uses of infinity were because we were trying to grasp complexity with paper and pencil. When we have massive amounts of computing, and maybe
Whoa,
Steve
yeah,
Jobs
yo,
just wants
live
to pick
streaming.
this up. With massive amounts of computing, a lot of that need for infinity, because the infinity, it was like standing back from the television screen. If you're too close to the screen, all you see are the dots. You stand back and it looks continuous. You've made the transition to the continuous to the infinite. So a lot of those infinities.
I used to
were
do that when I
because
was a kid.
We were trying to grasp
We had a
with
TV with a
complexity.
glass.
We have computers that can handle that complexity. Are we going to see that some of these infinities literally disappear?
It's
for
a
cognitive reasons?
very interesting question, and I feel ambivalent about the
Infinities disappearing.
finitist position that Doran Zeilberger expressed. Because it is true that we can get great insights from computers, which only carry finite amount of information in them. But I think I would like
Right.
to bring in another subject here, which we haven't talked about
Whoa.
much, which is art.
Art?
And I really think that there's an aesthetic reason in favor of infinity. That infinity not only is beautiful, but is simple.
Infinity is art.
Which might come as a little surprise to the audience members. That is, there are great simplifications inherent in pretending. I mean, whether infinity is real or not, like from a very practical
Infinity is
point of view,
art.
it's helpful to pretend that infinity does exist. As you said earlier, Keith,
This is art.
calculus is based on the domestication of infinity. That we can tame infinity, make it work for
Right.
us, pretending
So if
that
I'm
a
making
curve is
art, the
infinitesimally,
FBI is
you know,
gonna
as smooth
calculate
as
what
we
I'm
like,
doing to make
and not just
moves.
made up of lots of little straight segments.
If he's talking shit.
Gives us a nicer mathematics. It's just, that is, if mathematics is something
Wait,
that
what?
people-
What gives you a nicer math?
Domestication of infinity.
Domestication of infinity?
Inherent in pretending. I mean, whether infinity is real or not, like from a very practical point of view, it's helpful to pretend that infinity does exist. As you said earlier, Keith, calculus is based on the domestication of infinity. That we can tame infinity, make it work for us, pretending that a curve is infinitesimally, is as smooth as we like, and not just made up of lots of little straight segments, gives us a nicer mathematics. It's just, that is, if mathematics is something that people do to get insight from, as opposed to just something that machines do to get the right answer, we get a lot of insight by pretending that infinity exists.
Wow, right.
So in a way,
No
I don't
shit.
really care that much whether it does or it doesn't. It's more beautiful to pretend that it does.
What's
and actually
insight?
more practical.
See, this is why he said it's more beautiful that it does, but I had to stir him back, and the capacity to gain a deep intuitive understanding of. So, like, if I come across this, like, weird alien mechanism, do I have intuition to use it? Maybe not. Do I have, wow.
Practical, as long as we're the ones doing the mathematics and the science. When the machines take over, like in the Terminator, then we may live in a finite world, and then, yes, maybe it'll all be, infinity may be gone at that point.
But if you want to know how simple it can get, arithmetic of the infinite
Right, but
numbers
technically
gets really
with
easy.
satellites,
Adding two
isn't
numbers,
it in-
just the biggest one.
Technically, with satellites and imaging, isn't it finite? Like, if they're really up there and taking, you know, intel of everything, technically, isn't it finite to them if they got them all up there?
One. Multiplying two infinite numbers is just the biggest one. There you are. You can do all your arithmetic homework with those two facts if the numbers are infinite.
Right, yeah.
Exponentiation.
Contradiction.
I was leaving that one out because
Right,
that takes
no
us back
shit.
to Casper.
Terminator, then we may live in a finite world, and then, yes, maybe it'll all be, infinity may be gone at that point.
But if you want to know how simple it can get, arithmetic of the infinite numbers gets really easy.
Yes.
Adding two numbers is just the biggest one. Multiplying
two
two infinite numbers is just the biggest one. There you are. You can do all your arithmetic homework with
We'll
those two
multiply these
facts
two.
if the numbers are
Infinity
infinite.
is art, contradiction is guidance.
Exponentiation is a
I was leaving that one out because
What'd he
that
say?
takes us all your arithmetic homework with those two facts if the numbers are infinite.
exponentiation is a
I was leaving that one out because
Exponentiation.
that takes us back to Cantor.
Wow,
There's
no
room
shit.
for
That
numbers
takes us back to cancer, right? So he's just, wow, right? So this whole thing right here is like, I'm living in this heavenly realm, right? I got the 2/3 fucking positive spin on my quark and the negative 1/3 down spin on my quark. Watch the last video. I got these 2 points. Infinity is art, contradiction is guidance, right? So, and then he said, well, technically, like, the fucking way to get infinity is to do the exponential shit. And this guy, the moderator's like, well, you know.
exponentiation is a
I was leaving that one out because that takes us back to Cantor.
That takes us back to cancer.
There's art,
What?
Then you could also think of the role of the infinite and whether it's there or not in, say,
Math is
ethics.
cancer.
Let's take human free will.
Infinity
so we know
is
that
cancer.
A biological system produces some level of complexity. The next more complex biological system exponentially compounds that complexity. Move on to a being with, say,
Wow,
10 to the 11th
compounds the
neurons and
complexity.
10 to
Yeah,
the 14th
compounded way
neural
more
connection,
complexity than
say,
my
Homo
ancestors.
sapiens, right? Now there's a very large range of behaviors that we could engage in the next moment. Just take the 4 brains here, multiply the possibilities, right? And the audience could be really surprised, at what could.
Possibilities what?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I'm not telling you.
You got
who I
money?
admitted.
That's a,
You got money?
someone missing one?
Wait, what?
And what could
Height.
engage in the next moment. Just take the 4 brains here, multiply the possibilities, right? And the audience could be really
The
surprised.
4 brains here.
At what could.
Height. 1, 2,
I'm not telling you who I admitted.
Whoa,
I'm talking
whoa.
large
So he's
range
literally
of
talking
behaviors that
about-
we could engage in the next moment. Just take the
He's
4
talking about being the actual quantum tunnel that, like, he could guide the 4 brains. And he says 4 brains because he's excluding himself. This is his where he lives. There needs to be one input of, like, a data, a person.
brains here, multiply the possibilities, right? And the audience could be really surprised, at what could.
height. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I'm not telling you who I admitted.
That's a, someone missing one?
Mathematicians can't count.
Right, he's not telling who he
Moderator's
admitted.
not
Interesting.
allowed to play.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
What'd he say?
Mathematicians can't count.
He's trying real hard.
Moderator's not allowed to play.
Oh, all right.
Okay. But think of the
The moderator's not allowed to play, right. The moderator's not
Someone-
allowed to
the
joke
audience
about
could be
that
really
because it's
surprised,
serious.
At what could.
He's in a quantum tunnel.
2, 3, 4, 5.
I'm not telling you who I admitted.
That's a, someone missing one?
Mathematicians can't count.
Mathematicians can't count, and he's laughing real hard.
Someone missing one?
Right, mathematicians can't count. No way. Wow.
Mathematicians can't count.
And he's
The
joking
moderator's
fun
not
at that
allowed to
because
play.
that's not at all it.
Okay.
It's literally
Think
him.
of the
He's the
difference
one.
between that asymptotic increase in complexity
Right. There's
and
no freedom.
actual metaphysical freedom.
Right.
That given the state of the
You
universe, at
watching,
some
the
moment,
viewer has the
Houston
actual
could do
freedom, but
either this
you're in the
or not
superposition of
this,
two right
no
now.
matter what the whole causal chain behind. That's the leap from the asymptote to actually being what we call metaphysically free.
Wow.
And some of us in the audience would say, that really matters.
Huh,
I want to
it
know if
does.
I'm a really complex machine or if I have this kind of pure free will.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer, but I have this sense inside me
God.
that that question matters to me as an
Does
atheist.
any theologian think that humans are metaphysically free? That sounds like heresy. I would have thought God was the only infinite.
So lots of theologians and
Infinite.
philosophers think that there's a real
This is a
freedom.
different evening.
No, God is God, you fucking idiot. Hold up. Violated. You just look at him smile. He got caught. He's pretty serious. He's like, oh shit.
Any theologian think that humans are metaphysical?
Pure free will. Now, I don't know the answer, but I have this sense inside me that that question matters to me as an
Does
atheist.
any theologian
Question
think that
matters to me as
If
an
I have this
atheist.
kind of pure free will. Now, I don't know the answer, but I have this sense inside me that that question matters to me as an
Does
atheist.
any
Wow.
theologian think that humans are metaphysically free? That sounds like heresy. I would have thought God was
theologian?
the only infinite.
I feel like
So lots of theologians and philosophers think that there's a real
This is a
freedom.
different evening, Tom.
Different, excuse me? Well, we got a
Right.
theologian here. We might as well talk to him.
No,
right. So it's kind of like I am a God, Kanye West shit. I
But I
am
mean,
me.
it's one of those questions. I was thinking about your last
This is
answer,
my
Steve.
temple.
One of those questions where the difference between an asymptote and that infinitesimal difference might matter immensely to the agent herself.
I think what we're seeing in all of these questions is there's a big difference between a large
Wow,
finite
wow. He just
Immensely
answered
to
it.
the agent herself. Difference between
So here's the difference right here. And they're clapping.
But I mean, it's one of those questions. I was thinking about your last answer, Steve. One of those questions where the difference between an
Asymptotic
asymptote
freedom.
and that infinitesimal difference might matter immensely to the agent herself.
Agent herself. Whoa.
An asymptote and that infinitesimal difference
Infinitesimal difference.
might matter immensely to the agent herself.
Might matter immensely. Yeah, this fucking matters to me. Yeah, so he's talking about like just having stuff be
I
mattered.
think what we're seeing in all of these questions is that there's a big difference between a large finite number and infinity. And we're interested, I mean, as you were pointing out, for all practical purposes, infinity is a very good approximation in many cases to large finite numbers. When we say, you draw a circle, well, there's no perfect circle in nature. There's no number with infinitely many digits that we could actually write down.
Maybe.
We know that just based on what we know about physics, about the laws of physics.
Perfect is
It's just
finite.
not possible. But science, to a large extent, is trying to make quantitative predictions to a very good approximation.
Yes,
and
quantitative.
when we go from one theory to the next, it has to reproduce all of the old stuff.
So
and it's just
zero
going
is
to get a
perfect.
few digits
I'm
after the decimal better, even if the theory itself is a complete revolution.
It's a revolution, no,
And
but
so
you just got.
we
I'm a
are
fucking
in this
good guy.
business
You
of
just
making
got.
better and better approximations, and infinity has been an incredibly helpful thing.
I can't tell you how
for
to be
that.
good. I just gotta show you.
But at the end of the day, we also care about these qualitative questions. Is space infinitely divisible or not? Is the amount of information in the universe in
Infinitely
principle
divisible. Yeah, you
unlimited
got
or
fucking
not?
atom
What
colliders
we
and
do
shit.
with that information, you probably
interesting.
take away some other lessons than I would take away from that. But I think it's good that we have the ability to learn the answer to these more mundane questions by studying nature, by studying how nature behaves, and seeing that, okay, we certainly don't have an infinite amount of information in the universe. What we do with that is a separate question. But I think it helps, and it's qualitatively it's a huge difference.
We have
Quality
just
of
over
life.
5 minutes left, and there are 4 people, as we've just determined. So starting at this end, I'll leave you to last. We'll start at that end, and
Yeah,
everyone
yeah,
has basically 1 minute
What
to
the fuck? They
make their
talking
final
about
remarks.
infinity, yeah, infinity, yeah, infinity, Ward playing Call of Duty, yeah, Infinity Ward. Damn, I'm so bored playing Call of Duty. Yeah. Waiting in the lobby for my homie playing Search and Destroy. Yeah. Search and Destroy. You know we ganging up with the squad. I got my boys. Got my boys, got my toys, I got my classes set, classes picked for the next semester. Yeah, I'm really shooting out with that Winchester. Something in Infinity Ward. We talking infinity, talking conversations put you in the ward, yeah. Cause your mind, you might get caught up in the words, yeah. In the words, don't get me talking about the policies behind the wards, yeah. I'd be talking shit to go and get awards, yeah, The conditions don't meet the conditions when you were Christian, yeah, why? Cause I got my mission and I think that I am missing out on some information in this nation. But you don't have to listen to what I'm saying. I'm on a space station out here. I'm a philosopher, you could get to hating, yeah, get to hating while I'm waking up. I'm doing some other shit, probably an interview while you're master. I'm a master pain, yeah.
Before we let everybody out of here. There's no exam tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll tell you about another infinity. I told you that if you try to probe smaller and smaller distances, well, the reason we built CERN, right, and these huge accelerators is that you have to smash
CERN, no
things together
way,
with
right? You just literally did that. CERN. Oh, we spelled accelerator wrong. Wow, right? Yep. Look at that. I already clicked on that. The Large Hadron Collider. This shit's wild. Look at this shit. Particle accelerators. But what are these machines and how do they work? Fucking science shit right there.
a huge amount of energy in order to probe shorter distances. This is how the uncertainty principle works. You need a lot of energy to resolve short distances. And then what happens is, if you had enough money to build a much bigger accelerator that goes, many orders of magnitude higher
resources.
energy, eventually you'd start making black holes. And then as you crank up the energy more, you'd make bigger and bigger black holes.
Whoa.
And so there's sort of a minimum distance scale that you can get to, which
We're
which
the
is
black
called the
holes on
Planck
Earth
length.
right now. Area 51.
And this thought experiment
Pope.
is a nice way of seeing why you can't get to smaller distances. You can try to devise
human
more clever
eyes.
experiments, but they'll all lead to the same conclusion. But now make a big black hole and jump into it.
Yeah, jump in, bitch.
And when you jump
It's
into
Cape
it, space is contracting underneath you. It's kind of like the Big Bang in reverse.
feel
You
anything?
get to a region where matter becomes denser and denser. You could be sitting on a collapsing
You
star,
feel
for
more
example.
dense in
It's
the
gonna
head
get
'cause
compressed
you're
more
like
and
this
more,
dummy.
and the density becomes infinite. Einstein and his theory of gravity tells us that space becomes infinitely strongly curled up as you fall further into the black hole. This happens in a finite amount of time. You reach this point of infinite density. Of course,
Space
we know
becomes-
that that's nonsense, because at some finite density, we're leaving the regime
You
where
only
we
had
can
a
trust
minute,
the
bro.
theory. We know we have to replace the theory with something else. We need a theory of quantum gravity. We have to be able to describe
need a
something
theory of
small,
Chris
but
Payne,
also with a
yo.
lot of mass at the same time. This is what several people, including myself, spend their life trying to do. But it's another example where an infinity is basically leading the way.
You.
Well, so these infinities are all very small. That's right. I spent my life in, infinities really, really big, and people ask, well, you really believe in them? They're all falsifiable, right? They could be refuted. In fact, there have been mathematicians who have claimed or refuted some of them. So I make my prediction as I've made before. I picked one. Now, there's an infinity named after me, so I picked that one.
Yes.
And I said, if this infinity is falsified at any time, I will resign my position.
Yes. Yes, dude. Yes,
There you
dude.
go. I'm making
You.
my academic life.
I just
behind
changed my
this.
thing to
But even though that's
my
a frivolous
Instagram,
thing to say,
the
I have
Chris
said
Payne
it, and I
theory.
will do it. Now, as I get older, it's less of a. But the fact that we are able to come up with these principles that stand the test of time So I would make the prediction these won't be refuted in
The Chris
10,000
Payne
years.
theory.
That's a prediction about this universe.
Yes.
Well, how does one account for that?
How do I account
Unless
for
it's
it?
a
I will
reflection of
show you.
something that's meaningful.
Join my live
So
stream.
I leave you with that.
You fucking live stream me 24/7, boy.
I'd like to bring you back to the first infinity you may have ever thought about, which was, if I think
God.
about my own children, there's a plate in our kitchen, which is supposed to be funny, a pie plate. You may have one in your house. It's a pie plate, but it also has the digits of pi written around it, 3.1415. And so when my kids see this, and there's lots and lots of numbers on this plate spiraling in towards the center, this gave them their first glimpse of infinity. So when many people think of infinity,
I
they
had pie
think of
the
the
other night.
mystery of the number pi, that these digits go on forever, they don't
Holy
repeat,
fuck. I do go on forever.
and they
This
seem in
info
some
could go on
ways
forever.
unpredictable. And there's something to me so delicious.
Why you keep
I mean,
telling me
kitchen
I'm
puns aside
unpredictable?
there. Something so
Why you think I'm
delicious
delicious?
about the nature of a number like pi or other real numbers. I mean, pi is typical of real numbers in this way, that it has this infinite amount of unpredictable information in it.
Yes.
And that at the same time, it is so totally predictable. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
you
nothing
probably
more
could,
orderly
boy.
than
He
the
did
circle,
predict.
which pi embodies is the very
Squirtle.
symbol. I mean, there is nothing more orderly.
Squirtle.
A circle,
The
which
circle.
pi embodies, is the very symbol of order and perfection. And so this coexistence
Zero.
of perfect predictability and
Heart
order
coherence is
with
zero,
this,
in a way.
This tantalizing mystery of
Something like that. Let's get into it later.
infinite enigma built into the
Tantalizing
same
mystery.
object,
No, it's just me. It's
to
just me.
is
It's just
part
me.
of the pleasure of our subject of mathematics.
You have
and
the
I suppose of
subject right here,
infinity
Chris
itself.
Payne.
Beautiful closing. Beautiful closing. You know
The
what's
Joe
really
Rogan
sad
universe,
is you
not
can
Chris
see
Payne.
Mathematicians grappling with the complexity of the question. You can see physicists grappling with the complexity of the question to the very limits of what the human mind is capable of. And then you see religion
Right.
in the world today. Carl Sagan made this point in Pale Blue Dot. Satisfied with a notion of God so simple and non-complex, not
Right.
stretching us in the
Is
way
what
that
it
Steve's
is.
answer just did.
Huh.
And you think, wait,
Wow.
there's got to be something wrong with that.
Yeah.
So I
How'd you
call
know?
for a philosopher or a theologian or a religiousness or a spirituality, let's just stick with that word,
Right.
that would fight for that sense of something, what did Wordsworth say, something far more deeply interfused, that's worthy of an animal, of a species, that can grapple with the continuum hypothesis, that can grapple with finites and infinites in physics, that can think of its own ultimate fate or whatever that ground of all things is, with not less complexity and not less profundity and not less open-endedness than we've seen from my three colleagues to my left.
So you don't
on
want
the
me to be a
stage. If
philosopher?
human beings could do that, maybe it wouldn't be shameful to include philosophy alongside mathematics and physics.
Whoa, it wouldn't be shameful, right? Wow. No way. So you took away the shame. Thank you, sir. Yo, get me on the stage.
I'm going to
man.
let that be the last word because that was the way to go out. Okay,
Facts,
thank you all for your time.
Good luck, buddy.
Thank you.
that's the whole is what is healthy and what is well balanced.
Well, these are people who
What you just heard was the sound of the future. And I think I'm going to have to explain that a little. More than a century ago, in 1887, Simon Newcomb, who was then the dean of American astronomy, made an infamous remark. He said, quote, "So far as astronomy is concerned, we do appear to be fast approaching the limits of our knowledge. The result is that the work which really occupies the attention of the astronomer is less the discovery of new things than the elaboration of those already known." Well, of course, very soon after that, in the 1920s, our concept of the universe was completely transformed. First, we learned that the Milky Way was not the sole galaxy in the vast voids of space, but just one of a multitude of galaxies in the universe. And on top of that, we learned the stunning news that the universe is expanding. Well, I guess the lesson here is that it's very dangerous to suggest that we're ever approaching the limits of our knowledge, as Newcomb thought back in 1887. Yet, I have to confess, I had some of those similar thoughts back in the 1980s when I was beginning my science writing career. When I started covering the field of astronomy and astrophysics, I had the dismaying notion that all the windows of the universe were completely open. By then, astronomy had expanded beyond the visible light, collecting visible light with optical telescopes, into radio and infrared, ultraviolet, X-rays, and even gamma ray telescopes. I envied the science reporters who had come before me, who were able to actually see the founding of these fields, because every time a new window was opened, something spectacular was discovered. Pulsars, quasars, all these wonderful mysteries of the universe revealed. I truly thought that I was only going to be there to cover the further details. I was going to be part of the cleanup crew. But then during a series of magazine stories I was doing for Discover magazine in the 1990s, I learned about this new endeavor, which really sounded like a long shot, to build these complex instruments to detect gravitational waves, or gravity waves for short. And as we will learn, these are actual vibrations in space-time that Albert Einstein first predicted with a paper that he published in 1916. And so with this knowledge, and by doing these stories, I thought, I now have the chance, the opportunity to see an emerging field as it's being formed, which led to my book, Einstein's Unfinished Symphony, a title I chose because gravity waves are the last prediction from Einstein's great general theory of relativity that has not been confirmed directly. But this venture is also much, much more than that. This evening, we're going to learn how these new gravity wave telescopes that are now coming online will offer a completely new way to look at the universe, providing information that telescopes that gather electromagnetic radiation cannot provide. We'll learn why the gravity wave data comes as a sound, just as we heard at the opening, not as an image. In a way, our universe has been like a silent movie, only all of these images with no sound. Gravity waves are going to turn us into talkies, finally. We're going to start hearing what the universe has to say as black holes collide or stars blow up as supernova. We're going to learn how this may be the only way possible to make very precise explorations of the physics of black holes and even view the very moment of creation, the Big Bang. This is a new form of astronomy that was thought impossible not too long ago. And it's vastly different from how we've studied the universe in the past, as you'll see. Once upon a time, it was thought the universe ran like clockwork. The sun, earth, planets, and stars all moved with utter predictability, like a well-oiled machine. With observations, first with our unaided eyes, and then with telescopes, an advance introduced by Galileo, we discovered new planets, stars, and eventually distant galaxies. In 1687, Sir Isaac Newton published his monumental law of gravitation, showing how gravity was a universal force of nature. There was one problem, though. He couldn't explain the origin of gravity. Why is the Earth attracted to the sun? It wasn't until the beginning of the 20th century that Albert Einstein, with pencil, paper, and a great deal of thought, unveiled his general theory of relativity, revealing the true nature of gravity. Gravity, said Einstein, isn't simply an attraction between two objects. It arises from a distortion of both space and time, what is called space-time. Space-time is like a fabric, and what we call gravity is the result of the warping of this fabric by a massive object, like a star. The Earth orbits the sun because it's riding along the space-time curvature carved out by the star, like a ball spinning around a roulette wheel. With this in mind, Einstein also predicted the existence of gravitational waves, actual ripples in the fabric of space-time that are produced by the most violent events in the universe. But no instruments existed which could actually hear and measure these messengers of gravity, which Einstein envisioned. That is, until now. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our panel. First, I would like you to welcome Ray Weiss, who is often called the father of LIGO, the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, which is going to be the focus of tonight's discussion. Ray is an experimentalist at MIT. He has brought two fields of fundamental physics research from birth to maturity. First, the measurements of the cosmic background radiation, the echo of the Big Bang, and now gravitational wave observation. Ray, in fact, invented the interferometric gravitational wave detector, an idea he got while doing a homework problem for the students as he was teaching a course on general relativity. No small feat. Next, I would like to introduce Andrea Lohman. Andrea is both a physicist and astronomer who studies millisecond pulsars, tiny neutron stars that spin extremely fast. And in 1993, a Nobel Prize was awarded to Joe Taylor and Russell Hulse, who discovered a binary pulsar, which provided the first indirect evidence for the existence of gravitational waves. Andrea is continuing this work and is the chair of NanoGrav, which stands for North American Nanohertz Observatory for Gravitational Waves. And this project seeks to build a collaboration with North American, European, and Australian astronomers to detect gravitational waves from the sky via pulsars. Next panelist, Kip Thorne. Kip is a theoretical scientist known for his prolific contributions in gravitational physics and astrophysics. He's one of the world's leading experts on the implication of Einstein's general theory of relativity and has written numerous books on the subjects, including the best-selling Black Holes and Time Warps. And he's garnered prizes and honors too numerous to list, but I'll mention a few. The Lilienfeld Prize of the American Physical Society, the Karl Schwarzschild Medal of the German Astronomical Society, and the Albert Einstein Medal from the Albert Einstein Society. And more interestingly, in his latest career, he's currently co-author and executive producer of a new movie project with its working title being Interstellar, to be directed by Steven Spielberg. And he's also co-founder with Ray of the LIGO Observatory. And last, Laura Danley. Laura is currently serving as curator of the famous Griffith Observatory situated in the Hollywood Hills of Los Angeles, but she's also an experienced astronomer who has had extensive experience, hundreds of hours, making both optical and radio observations at such facilities as the Kitt Peak, McDonald, and National Radio Astronomy Observatories, as well as ultraviolet space telescope observations. Welcome, panel. Welcome to this evening. Thank you. I'd like to begin talking about how we got here to begin with from the past, from the astronomy of the past. Laura likes to describe herself as someone who has retained the childlike wonder whenever she looks up at the sky, and which is actually the way the ancients first studied the universe. What do you remember about your first observations, the way the ancients looked at it?
Everyone is an astronomer in some sense if you've ever looked up and seen anything in the sky. And I think that's just about where every astronomer has started. For those who might have been at the opening gala, there was a song, a chorus saying about nose in the air, because astronomers are always looking up. But it's true. If you are, well, most every astronomer I know just began by the fascination of what is out there, what does it mean, how can I understand it? And you can't touch it. That's why I think people think of it as a domain of gods, because it's untouchable. You can't put it in the lab. You just have to receive the light and try to understand what it is you're seeing.
Well, first that was with our eyes, but things changed around 1610 when Galileo and his contemporaries introduced the telescope. How did things change with that?
The more we've come to understand about light, the more we understand how to manipulate it. And it actually first just came from experience. You all know if you hold up a glass of water in front of someone's face, it will distort. And so materials can change the way light things look through them. And so the idea that using a lens or a curved mirror to magnify and to collect light is really the basis of all that followed. And more sophisticated ways of collecting light, analyzing light, measuring light is really the history of 400 years now of astronomy.
And what do we learn from gathering electromagnetic radiation?
Light, and I will ask for the first, is something we're all familiar with. If you've ever played with a prism, you know that a prism will break light up into different colors, and those different colors are simply different wavelengths of light. Light is a wave, And red has a longer wavelength, blue has a shorter wavelength. And so we can measure the different wavelengths of different kinds of light and understand something about the nature of that light. If you look a little further, and you really tear apart what an electromagnetic wave, what is called, this will come in handy when we talk about gravitational waves. There are a couple things you can learn or study or measure about waves. One is how big the amplitude of the wave is. You know, surf's up, I'm from California, bigger wave, lots more fun. The other is the wavelength, or the space between the crests. And a third is what's called the polarization. You don't experience that so much unless you have Polaroid sunglasses, but it's the angle, the way these little crests and troughs go, what orientation they're traveling. And each and every one of those measurements contains information. It's like information of distant objects is encoded, and it really is quite a lot like encoding information about the source of that object.
What sorts of things? What do you learn?
I can look at a galaxy that is billions and billions of light years away, and well, no, that's not true, but very far away, and measure, for example, its velocity by measuring how the wavelength or the difference between crests has changed based on how fast it's traveling. If you've ever gotten a speeding ticket from the Doppler shift, you know this technique well. Astronomers do that to check out speeding galaxies. But things like the wavelength of light that I was speaking about a minute ago, they all also will tell you the temperature of the object, the chemical composition of the object. You know, really just about everything we've learned about the things off the Earth have been studied by different types of light. And expanding beyond what our eyes can pick up, the visible, is light from, and I heard in your introduction mention of longer wavelength light like infrared and microwave and radio waves, or shorter, more energetic types of light like ultraviolet light, X-rays, and gamma rays. So each and every one of those, this is a lot of information on this slide, but there's a lot of information encoded in light. And so the trick of the astronomer has been, over the years, to just successively decode the information and figure it all out. And that's the enterprise we're all part of.
And the next thing that astronomy is really involved in is forces. And of course, the universal force, the force that has the greatest effect throughout the cosmos, is gravity. And how did the ancients view gravity? I mean, this is the first thing we learn of as we're born. Yeah. We feel it immediately.
Yeah, even the first sort of understanding you have of all things is that nothing stays the same. Everything changes. And what is the force behind that change? Is there an invisible hand? Are there laws of nature? I mean, that's been you know, mankind's great quest for as long as the written, and certainly before probably as well. What causes things to happen the way they do? And scientists have now come to understand that there are some fundamental forces, 4 of them in particular. Tonight we're really focusing on gravity, but as you properly said, gravity is everywhere. We experience it all the time. Every time you fall off a log, every time you drop something, you know that gravity is at hand. So
well, how did Aristotle think about it?
So the ancients thought of it as really matter trying to seek its right place in the universe. If the center of the universe was the Earth, then the more solid, the denser matter would try to get to the center of the universe, and lighter things would try to move to their right place. So rocks would fall and steam and smoke would rise, and that was just the natural order of things. But he made the prediction that therefore heavier things should fall faster. And that was undone, shall we say. Well, people had started to wonder, that's not exactly right. How can we measure that? Can we take what my experience shows and see whether that's true? So I did actually bring a prop here, and this is going to be messy.
Astronomy's new messengers. What? This sure looks creepy right here. Uh-oh. You are warned. We are warned. Sorry. Interesting. Eating is tough though sometimes, but taste is a sense type of thing. You got the Whippet shit. What is that? Oh no. The recipes. Liquid peaks, yeah. Control caviar. Some type of fish. Mango sphere. Wow. Melon caviar. Olive sphere. Why are they sphere? Doesn't matter. Mozzarella bone. Huh? Gel paper's like a cake. Mojito sphere? Carbonated mojito sphere? This is dumb. Are you serious? What even was that?
Vsauce! Kevin here. Go to a restaurant, look at the menu, and then eat it. Molecular gastronomy is an innovative way of cooking that combines culinary arts with science. As food is prepared and combined in what's called a colloidal system, ingredients go through physical and chemical changes. Chefs utilizing molecular gastronomy use
Fuck, dude. This might actually be really bad timing. Fuck, man. Alright, wow, okay.
their artistic and technical abilities to influence the food's transformations. These techniques turn boring traditional cuisine into a modern sensory experience. By looking at food simply as states of matter in different types of colloidal systems, foam, solid foam, gel, emulsion, and solid emulsion, molecular gastronomists prepare unique dishes like this deconstructed.
What's emulsion? Fine dispersive manipulate droplets of one liquid which is soluble or miscible. Cool.
Did baby corn, or this creative take on lemon chicken. And they bring unique tools into the kitchen such as hypodermic syringes for spherification, which involves liquid-filled beads that create gel equivalents of foods ranging from caviar to ravioli. The vacuum machine is used to suck out air from a bag in order to use a cooking technique called sous vide, which slowly cooks the food, which involves liquid-filled beads that create gel equivalents of foods ranging from caviar to ravioli. The vacuum machine is used to suck out air from a bag in order to use a cooking technique called sous vide, which slowly cooks the food in heated water to retain moisture. Or another important tool that they use, liquid nitrogen. Robin Sue Fisher, founder of Smitten Ice Cream in San Francisco, wanted to make ice cream as fresh as possible that didn't require a bunch of chemicals to preserve, and her solution was liquid nitrogen. It's nitrogen at an extremely low temperature in a liquid state, first liquefied at Jagiellonian University in 1883 by Polish physicists Zygmunt Wróblewski and Karol Olszewski. By using liquid nitrogen, Fisher found that she could rapidly freeze ice cream, allowing her to make each serving fresh right when a customer orders. Chef Hamro Cantu at Moto Restaurant in Chicago makes edible menus, and this bread and butter menu was one of the first. Cantu's masticable menus include one printed on a salad roll, which after reading the menu, the customer just rolls it up and eats it. For printing, they use a modified inkjet printer with cartridges filled with food-based ink, like juiced carrots, tomatoes, and purple potatoes. One of Moto's most innovative courses is a play on fried chicken.
Samosa, you gotta get the fuck out of here. You gotta get the fuck out of here. Come on, come on. Yeah, good boy. Samosa. Puppy stage life. It's frustrating, dude. I'm just trying to chill the fuck out. This is why it would be nice to just have like an internet fucking hut in the middle of somewheres with food and water and this type of food.
In which noodles and biscuits are made with dehydrated, freeze-dried chicken ground into a powder. If you want to experiment with molecular gastronomy yourself, the YouTube channel Molecule R Flavors has tutorials anyone can follow with the right ingredients. Like this frozen chocolate wind that uses soy lecithin, which is a natural emulsifier that changes watery solutions into an air-like substance. Or these surprise bubbles that use calcium lactate and sodium alginate derived from brown algae to create spheres. You can also check out their website that offers...
you could have food like that. That's cool. Social justice reality of food.
This is the checkers game where grandson and granddad will bond.
Michael Twitty. Getting litty with Twitty.
You see that little knuckle-headed boy on the screen?
Right here.
He was a weird kid. That kid was me.
Wow.
Which makes a really great upbringing for a future black, gay, Jewish culinary historian.
Wow, right, good one.
And I'm not making up the last part. I really am one of the chocolate chosen, so this feels like a bar mitzvah to me. At any
Good for
rate,
you, bro. You made it to TED. That's it.
That was my best friend on the table. That was the
legit.
Collegiate Webster's Dictionary, which gave me my first big word I was very proud of.
That was kind of weird.
The word was hermaphrodite. But of course I did actual kid things like...
Hermaphrodite? What's that? Aphrodite. Intersex person. Or what? Both ovary and testicular tissue.
Which gave me my first big word I was very proud of. The
Is that
word
like a
was
tissue like he cries in? He cries in like a girl or a guy or what?
hermaphrodite. But of course I did actual kid things like fast food and cartoons
America.
and superhero underwear.
America.
And one time I got in trouble for trying to boil water to make packaged ramen with heated stones like it was the Stone Age. That's what you do when you're going to be a culinary historian. You experiment.
Right.
But you know something? Like a lot of African American children, I grew up not liking who I was. I didn't like soul food. I didn't like being black.
It's tough
For
to
most
do.
of my life, I've lived at the
Sounds-
intersection
Sounds like comedy.
of the illusion of race and the reality of food. And I'd like to tell you today how I changed my address from loathing to love and revolutionized my approach to both.
Wow.
For the past 500 years, we have changed our relationship. We have changed our relationship with race and food in multiple ways. We turn our relationship with race to shit faster than our food. And that has been endemic of this so-called Columbian era of exchange and contribution, which is full of exploitation and oppression.
Right.
So how do we solve that? Through culinary justice. Here's the problem. Our tables are impacted
Culinary
by the
justice.
multiple ways that racism has fed into our food system, from chronic diseases to culinary appropriation.
Wow.
Now, to be clear,
Wow.
culinary
Specific
appropriation and
diseases.
culinary diffusion are two different things. But when you exploit a people for their
I'm not
culinary
trying to defeat
heritage,
the culinary
take the best from them and leave the rest, that's culinary appropriation.
Wow.
The solution to which lies in culinary justice. I define culinary justice as the idea that oppressed peoples have the right to not only be recognized for their gastronomic contributions, but they have the right to their
What?
inherent value, to derive from them uplift and empowerment.
Gastronomic contributions? You're right, dude. You have the right to fart.
So 33 years ago, I learned about this amazing people. Any gourmet restaurant would love to teach them all about their food and their food culture. They practiced local eating. They ate organically.